Let's pick up where we left off with part two of our chat with an accomplished author who is on her fourth book in a series and planning so much more. So, what are we waiting for? Let's start the show. I'm very excited to share the second half of our conversation with author and educator Frances Wong. We'll talk about her first story ideas, what's happening right now with her Lexi Walker series, and of course, we'll continue to discuss some of our favorite TV shows and films. So, without further ado, here's part two of our chat on this episode of Wocket Launch. So, you've watched all the science fiction. This is something that you've always been
Yeah.
aware
Yeah,
of
always.
and you've always been part of. When do you make that switch and say, you know what, I need to start writing science fiction and fantasy?
Yeah, I think most of my stories started off as fantasy, but I'm always drawn back to science fiction. I think science fiction it's got more rules, and I think I need to stay within the rules. Whereas fantasy, you can make anything happen. You can make a tree grow out your head if you want to. Whereas in science fiction, there'd have to be a reason for that. It's like you've got spores that were in the air and now have attached to your skin, and there'd be a reason and there'd be science behind it. And I think that's the kind of the rules that I need for my own writing. So I can say, this has happened because of all of this, and it's explained and it's all done. And I think that's why science fiction pulled me in more. And I always thought, which do I prefer? Do I prefer science fiction or fantasy? So if I said Lord of the Rings was on TV and Star Trek was on TV, which would I rather watch? And I think I'd go for Star Trek because I just love the storytelling and the science and it feels more achievable as well. It feels like maybe in the future I could fly a spaceship or a flying car or something like that. So it's still got that realism for me. It's still something that can happen. I'm not going to turn into an elf anytime soon. And Gandalf is not going to come and ask me to do a mission with him. But I could fly a spaceship. I could go to space if something bizarre happened that made that a realistic event for me. But so I think it's because it's achievable and it's something that I could possibly do. And that pulls me into science fiction a bit more. And I still can do those fantasy things because a lot of the science doesn't exist anymore. We can't travel to different planets outside our solar system at the moment within our lifetimes. But with that tiny bit of fantasy element, you can, because you have a warp drive or you have a wormhole or you have a Stargate. So these things make it possible. And that just brings that, maybe it could be me element into it. Yeah. I think it's difficult to go all the way back to my first science fiction story. I know before this one, I wrote one about two people. It wasn't really a science fiction story particularly. It was a story about two people who went on very different journeys, but obviously it happened in space. So one of the first ones was these two characters, male and female, because I tend to balance it out and have a male character and a female character.
Sure.
And they were friends on a spaceship, or they were acquaintances, or they knew each other on the spaceship, and the spaceship is attacked. And then they both have very different experiences of this attack. One of them goes into an escape pod and escapes, and then it's all about what happened to him during that journey. And then the other one is the girl stays on the ship, and it's all about what happens to her staying on the ship. And it was really interesting to explore those journeys. It was very Ian Banks inversions, I thought, because he's got two characters, very different stories. And then it was going to come round, they were going to meet each other again, obviously having changed very much and being very different characters after that. And another one, I'm very much against any exclusion of people based on colour or orientation or anything like that. I don't like that at all. So I wrote a book where there's been a war on Earth between an alien species and a human species. And they were friends. So there are aliens and humans who had babies together, hybrid children. And what happens in this story is Earth has had a war. They expelled all the aliens from Earth. And then the war left a lot of orphans afterwards. And they were like, what do we do with these orphans? So they decided to send them off on a mission into space. And a lot of the hybrid children were kept secretly on the same spaceship. And what the main character's boy finds out that they're there, and it's all about about challenging an in-depth hatred of this alien species who've started the war. Spoiler alert, sorry, they didn't start the war. But it's all about going against what you've been taught about a group of people saying, oh, they must be bad. They started the war and they do this to people and they do that to people. And it's not true. And even if it was true, it's not this person who's next to you on the spaceship. So I like to challenge a lot of, I like to say, people are people. Like, it doesn't matter about anything. If they're an alien species or whatever, they're still people. They still love, they still hate, they still fight, they still eat. And that was one of my stories that I wanted to do that, but it was quite a big story and I haven't published that one yet because I think it needed to be handled very delicately. So that was another one of my first ones.
I will tell you that one of the things that I love about science fiction people in general is that I've talked about this often, is the fact that I love being able to, like, when you go to a convention, you go to some place where you have a bunch of people that like the same thing, was that you know the other person, you know their heart, you know they're good people. And they don't see the same kind of barriers that the real world out there sees because we have been preconceived. We have notions in our head about an alien isn't always an alien. Oh, I get it. That's possible. But we've seen all these films or what books. There's that establishment of what is out there, and the
Mhm.
fact that alien is only alien when you don't know what it is. It's
Yeah,
only alien because you're not aware of it. And so I love that idea of especially learning about who did what and also changing people's mindset.
absolutely. The boy, he's got a job on the spaceship. He's a coder. And the girl who's the hybrid alien person, she was also a coder because they need lots of code. I hadn't worked it all out yet. It wasn't the final draft.
Sure.
And so she starts noticing that his code is a bit rubbish. So she makes a little avatar of, I think it was a rabbit or something. And she's like trying to teach him how to code. So they form their friendship without ever meeting each other via the internet sort of thing. And then they go, shall we meet? And she's a bit like, maybe not, because I don't think you'll like me because I'm an alien. So there's this whole trepidation about meeting someone he's never met. And he's all looking around the spaceship going, is it him? Is it her? Is it that one? Or is it this person? And he has no idea that it's a hybrid alien that's kept in a different part of the ship, segregated. And then the idea would be that the two populations would come together and learn about each other and realize we're okay. We can be nice to each other.
I always talk about people in general when you're meeting them is the fact you don't know what they're going through, what their life is like, or what it's a good day or bad day, or whatever. My wife is also a teacher, and she teaches middle school, and there are times where she is having a bad day or something's not going great, and then we'll talk about the fact that the kids that actually are there and how she's helped them and how you can see a change in their life and you see them happier, see them feel like they are prouder of themselves. And
Yeah.
it's like you don't know what's going on in somebody's life, but you never know how you can affect somebody. And I think writing science fiction that tells us, informs us, well, I think that not only is that really smart, but it's necessary and needed. I think we find
Yeah.
ourselves always struggling with that. There's an old movie called Colossus the Forbidden Project where the computer gets so smart it decides, you
Mm,
know what? The only thing in the way of mankind is mankind, so I should take over.
yeah.
And sometimes I feel that way. If the let Cyberdyne come in and let's the Terminator show up. Sometimes maybe that'd
Yeah.
be better for it. You never know.
Yeah. I did do a thread about would you rather have an honest politician or an AI overlord? And I think the AI
Absolutely.
overlord won. A fair AI overlord. I think it won.
It seems only fair, quite frankly, especially because what's a fair politician? Is a bit of an oxymoron.
Yeah. To get into that position, you have to have a certain mindset, don't you? So I don't know how many fully altruistic people would want to go through that process.
That's again, you kind of get back to Babylon 5 and shows like that, where you're putting people in situations where they have to be in charge of that and have to deal with all these different personalities and races and species. What I
Mhm.
truly loved about that was the fact that they were able to treat everybody with a level of kindness and support that we have not been able to find here on this planet yet. And I do all those aspirational shows that give me that look in the future, go, that's a possibility. We'll get there someday.
And Babylon 5 didn't do it in a utopia way like Star Trek does. It did it in a
Right.
sort of, this is how it is. It wasn't dystopian particularly, but it wasn't utopian either. It was,
It was
yes,
messy.
like real
And
life.
right. And that's what it's about. And you have certain people in the delegation, they said, no, we don't want to do this. Let's talk to them and figure it out. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought there was a real world element to that. That was really, it was
Yeah.
just a very kind of like intriguing and smart way to present that in that kind of like format. But you kind of get back to almost any good science fiction. It reminds me of Gulliver's Travels. The idea of,
Yeah.
if I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to tell this story about this thing, and it might be the thing in front of you, but I'm going to tell you in a way that you're going to be like, oh, that's intriguing. Let me learn more
Mhm.
about this. And then not realizing I'm really talking about whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Now,
think good
did
sci-fi really wraps things up in that space, that futuristic, that technology way. So you can still address the issues of the day, but you're doing it in a way that's creative and imaginative, that's different.
now I do have to ask, did you ever get into the old television stuff, the Twilight Zone?
I used to watch Outer Limits. That was my one
Okay.
when I
Outer
was
Limits.
younger. Yeah. And
Oh,
that was quite scary for a
oh
young
yeah. It's
teenager.
the difference with Twilight Zone and Outer Limits was Twilight Zone was more about that experience, and it was usually something strange or odd or otherworldly. With the Outer Limits, there's always some kind of monster in it. And there
Yeah.
was an episode called Nightmare, I think, of the Outer Limits where it was like these soldiers on another planet and they were captured by these bat people. And I just remember I had, oh my dreams were filled with that for the longest. It was so
Yeah.
scary. Martin
Yeah.
Sheen was in that. There was like all these actors that became famous later. But yeah, it's just, oof, man, good stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you ever watch Erie, Indiana?
yes, yes, I used to watch that. And
Yeah.
then right after that, I started watching Eureka.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever saw that. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my goodness. But it was very, that was the whole kind of a goosebumps kind of thing where you'd have all these
Yeah.
strange things happening. But it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all in keeping with that anthology kind of show. And I love that. I always like the idea of building a show that kind of gives you a structure that you can play within that
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. And I always used to love the characters and something different happens to them every day. And they still manage to keep going. That
Right.
was, yeah. Erie, Indiana was one of my favorites when I was younger. And that's all coming back to me now. All these
Well,
shows I
that's the
used to
thing.
watch.
That's the thing is I talk to people about science fiction all the time. And what happens is the fact that it's that collective memory. We have these things where we're like, oh, that was really important, but I've completely wiped that out because I put in this new bits of information.
Yeah.
And I feel this. I feel the same way about Doctor Who. Getting back to Doctor Who, all the Tom Baker stuff that I watched him for years and years, and then when they did the resurgence in 2005, I guess it was 15. I don't know.
You know, something like that.
Anyway, when they started with Christopher Eccleston and all that, I was surprised at how much I loved the show, and I couldn't get past. Oh my god, this is so good that I ended up going back and watching a bunch of older episodes and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Slowly,
Yeah.
I became immersed with a lot of Who. It didn't matter what it was, and I kept up to it to this day. And I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what's going to do. I don't know what's going to happen with it. But I just wanted to keep going. I know they have a.
Mm.
I'm excited to have a new miniseries coming out about Unit, which will be happening here actually in the next
Yeah.
few months. So we'll see.
Yeah, they're doing a lot with the world building as well. Sylvester McCoy was my doctor. And I
Oh,
was
very
very
nice.
lucky to meet him at a Comic-Con once. And I fell apart and I got very starstruck and I just kept going, "You're my favorite doctor," over and over again. I get very starstruck, apparently. And he was so nice. He was so good with my children as well. He was really nice to talk to. And yeah, so we're really glad that we met him. He was lovely.
I will tell you that I don't collect a lot of stuff. People like to give me things, and like I have my TARDIS back
Mm.
there, but I was saying, but I don't really. And the one thing that I don't do because I was in the film business for a while, and I would meet a lot of actors, but I never asked for an autograph. I couldn't do that.
Mm.
So, but I did have the luck of being able to meet every member of the original cast of the original Star Trek, and in each
Oh,
case, I just shook their hands. But there was one instance where I got to meet William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and DeForest Kelley at the same time, and the only 3 autographs that I have out of everything. So I've kept
that would
those 3
be,
because it all happened at the same time. They were all in the same place, and we talked for a few minutes, and it was just lovely. So it was
yeah,
just
that'd be amazing.
Fandom is such a strange thing because you become fans of this thing, and for them, sometimes it's a job or maybe
Yeah,
whatever it depends on
yeah,
how deep they're into it.
yeah,
But that appreciation, they understand how much you cared about what they did and the work they put into it, how
yeah.
meaningful it was. DeForest Kelly was just delightful. Tell me about your latest books. Tell me about what you're working on right now, what just came
So
out.
my Lexi Walker series, right button. Hmm. Lexi Walker series. So again, it's a strong female character because I do think in sci-fi we need more of them, and but also a strong male character as well. Lexi is playing in the field. She's a teenager. She's 12 in the first book, and she's playing in the fields, and she sees this mysterious orb flying past her, and she's, "What's that?" And she just lost her parents, so she's in a very strange place at that time. She's trying to hide her grief at losing her parents, but she's also trying to express herself as well. So she's in a very strange emotional place. So she chases this orb, and when she catches it, she becomes imbued with alien powers, which is all explained later in the series. So it's not magic, it's got a reason, and it's got a base in science. And then because she's got these powers, she starts seeing things that normal humans don't see, and she heals, and aliens live on Earth at this point, but nobody knows. So it's a big surprise. And she discovers this alien world hidden beneath the library. And from then on, it's just adventure after adventure with her and Tim always by her side.
So, how much of her as a character is a representation of who you were?
I think quite close, which is a bit awkward sometimes if I think, what things that she gets up to. Because now I'm older, I've got anxiety and I've got quietness and I'm much more subdued. But when I was younger, I'd be the first person charging up a tree. I'd get lost in a forest and be working. I remember once I actually used footprint tracks to work my way back out of a forest because that was the kind of person I was. I'd charge into the forest and go, where am I? And that's a bit like my main character. That's what she does. She's very much going, that needs doing, so let's go do it. So she's very gung ho. And my daughter as well is very similar to that. And so a lot of my daughter is in her as well. It's not the same. There's a lot of things that Lexi does that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. It adds drama to the story, doesn't it? So you've got to have that drama element as well. So yes, there's elements of me, there's elements of my daughter, and she's just very gung ho. She'll get in, and that's her character arc. Is starting off as this very much let's get it sorted, let's go, to going, hang on a minute, perhaps I need to plan before I go charging in. But yeah, so that's her character arc, and that's how she changes. And then Tim, who's her best friend, has got elements of my husband, elements of my son. Tim's Chinese and my husband is Chinese, so I brought that in as well. So it ties in. And I think my son and my husband combined inspired him as a character. So so they're both very powerful characters, but very opposing characters. And sort of their character arcs swap through the story.
I love the idea that you imbued it with so much of yourself and also your family, because I think we draw from the things that we know, obviously. But it sounds like the headstrong element of that has always been part of you. That's always been
Yeah.
the way you are. So now you have, at this point, we're into it, I think, 3 books. Is that?
Yeah, I'm deep in the 4th book now, writing it at the moment.
Do you have an idea of like where does it end, or is it something that continues for a while?
I think I'm inspired by Ender's Game with this one, where he has an end to his book, but actually the character goes off and does other things.
Sure.
So in the 5th book's going to be absolutely explosive. Everything is changing. The whole galaxy is going to have to reform because of Lexi. It's not just Earth anymore. It's the whole galaxy and billions of stars, billions of people. It's all going to be impacted because of Lexi's actions. And in this universe, humans don't know about aliens, and they're thought of as primitive because they don't have space travel like the aliens do. And so she is a very small, insignificant person in the scheme of things, but actually she's one of the most powerful creatures in the whole of the galaxy. And I'm really looking forward to writing the 5th book. I think it's going to be something that's really explosive, is the word I'm going for
Well,
at the moment.
I was absolutely. I think one of the things I appreciate about that is that, like, I could really appreciate the way Ender's Game structured it with Speaker of the Dead coming right afterwards
Yeah.
and learning more
Yeah.
about this kind of thing. And then later on to learn that there's this whole thing going on with Bean to see the other side of it. And I
Mhm.
love it when you can take a whole either a series or a group of books and then you say, wait a second, there's another perspective here. And then
Yeah.
tell that story because people that already love the characters and love what's going on, they know the environment, know the world building that you've set
Mhm.
up. And then it's fun to be able to explore beyond that. And just, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
I've
What a
got lots
thrill.
of ideas for side character books as well, because there's quite a few. She goes to a school. It's been described as Hogwarts in space by some of my beta readers. And so she's got all these other characters that she interacts with who witness all these events and they could also be part of them. So there's a big scope for widening that universe as well and to see what goes on. But I have other stories that I want to write that are like crowding in my head at the moment.
But isn't that always the problem? Is no matter what you're working on, you have something else. And even though you might be really excited that moment, something will
Yeah.
creep in and go, and you have to write something else for a little bit to just,
Yeah.
yeah, I know what that's like.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it's all Skeleton Crew's fault. So that inspired me to write another bit, just a snippet. I've got a few snippets, but it's all and Dark Matter and Skeleton Crew mixed together. I'm thinking,
I thought Skeleton Crew was one of the most inventive of the Star Wars, and it was such a family-friendly
oh,
Star Wars adventure.
oh
I
yeah,
think it was the one thing it's kinda like when I was young and we all wanted the Ewok adventures to be something exciting, and it wasn't. But to learn, it's kinda like maybe that's why I like Willow, or there's certain
mm,
those adventures where you can just go out and you're following somebody who is so not supposed to be the heroes. We're in an incredible time for people that like science fiction.
yeah. Oh, there's
It
so
just
much out there.
I have told people before, you can't ever come up with a favorite film. I think that's ridiculous because I
Hmm.
this would be here. I have
Yeah,
72 number ones.
yeah.
But I
That's
tell
me.
people this: I have a long day. I'm really tired. It's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and on the television there's something that's on, and I end up I have to watch it till the end. What's that show? What's that movie for you?
There's so many. Red Dwarf. Red
Oh
Dwarf.
my
If I
goodness!
watched the first 3 seasons of Red Dwarf, are my favorite, and just the boys from the Dwarf hanging out with them would be amazing. But also Fast. Oh, there's too many. Farscape was on. I'd have to watch that whole episode. Absolutely, it wouldn't even matter which episode, even a Scorpy episode, which is my least favorite.
Right.
Yeah, but I love Farscape. I think if any of the new Star Trek films are on, I'd probably watch those as well to the end. This is going to be a very long list. We might be here a while because there's
Now, when you
just
say new Star Trek, which Star Treks you talking about? The ones with
Star Trek
Christopher Pike?
Into Darkness and Beyond.
Got it.
I know they're not always canon as well, and they're not always. They've started a new timeline, but I like the visuals from them as well, and I do like the character dynamics and all that kind of thing. But I still love the original films.
Sure, sure.
Massive fan.
I will tell you that Star Trek Beyond is so underrated. It's such a fantastic movie. I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
And what is her name? Kayla or the woman, the fighter that is.
Oh yes, I know who you mean.
Oh my
Yeah,
god, I want her to be in every Star Trek thing from that
yeah.
point forward. And she was just so dynamic. It's so
She was
much
good.
fun. Oh my god, it's
Absolutely.
Jayla, that's it. Sorry, it
Yeah,
was close,
yeah.
but yes.
There's just so
Oh,
many fantastic characters. Like my gamer name is Erin Sun whenever I go on a game because I love Erin Sun. I think she was one of the best. She did great with that character.
yeah.
And yeah, and Claudia Black's one of my favorite actresses as well. She's been in other things and I think she's brilliant. And
Now,
there's just so
did you end up
many.
did you end up moving over and watching any of the Stargate?
I was young when the film came out, so I went to the cinema and saw
Sure.
the film. Obviously, loved it. The visuals, the story, the Stargate itself, the whole possibilities of traveling the galaxy, that they were humans that had been taken from Earth. Just so many things to love. And I
Right.
did love SG1 for a long time. It was one of my favorite shows. But then I say that Babylon 5 is one of my favorite shows. Star Trek is one of my favorite. They're all my favorites. I love them.
Sure.
But I think the later series didn't grab me as much as the first three, I think, of Stargate.
And considering that the last 2 or 3 seasons
Yeah.
yes. Browder come over and then Claudia come over. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
I think their
I'm
characters were great. They were
yeah.
good and the stories were good, but it didn't
I mean,
grab me as much.
I think
Sorry.
part of the problem is the fact that people got so used to Jack and
Yeah.
Teal
Yeah.
and Daniel
Yeah.
and Samantha that was just like it's just so comfortable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anytime you do a change of any kind, and I'll tell you a brief story real quick because I know we're already way late. When Star Trek: The Next Generation was coming out, I invited friends over, and they knew I was a huge Star Trek fan. I said, "We're going to watch this, but keep in mind one thing before big preamble that this is a different Star Trek. It has nothing to do with the original, and you
Hmm.
cannot have this captain versus
Yeah.
this captain, this character versus that. They're
Yeah.
completely separate." And so
Absolutely.
we watch Encounter at Farpoint. I thank everybody. I usher them out, and they all leave. I shut the door. I look at my wife and I say, "Kirk would never give up the ship.
No.
Picard gave up the ship 3 times in the first episode. What is going on here?" And so anyway.
Yeah.
That's my life.
And it's hard. It's
Uh,
hard because when they change main characters as well, and you're going, no, I like the last one better.
I
It
know,
is hard, but then you learn to love them as well.
right? You do, and yeah, there's not a Doctor Who I haven't really enjoyed. And quite frankly, every time I'm not going to get. Oh, by the end of the episode, I'm like, oh my god, I love this
Yeah.
guy or this woman. And I've just been very happy with the way that's worked out. But I know that with Stargate, we had Stargate and then we had Atlantis, and I
Hmm.
really enjoyed that. And then they had Universe, which is only 2 seasons long, and everybody hated it for the longest time. And part of that is because
Yeah.
it didn't Stargate. It felt more like Battlestar Galactica, like that, and because it was much more gritty and dark. But if you watch it, especially if you've had some time between watching the original Stargate and
Mm.
then watch Universe, it's really well put together, and it's still in that universe. And
Yeah.
there's even cameos by Jack and by Sam and even Daniel in the first episode. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting, but it's
Yeah.
hard. We don't want to give up the shows we love.
No. I
Once you
think I
love it,
fell out with Stargate because I moved to Hong Kong early 2000 or 2008. And from 2003 to 2008, lived in Hong Kong. So I didn't get as much English speaking TV. And my Chinese isn't quite good enough to understand it dubbed. So I did fall out with English TV for a little while as well. So I think I missed out on series and then coming back into them at a time when we didn't have streaming. My favorite characters are gone and I don't know who this is and I don't know who that is. So I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't get into Stargate as much as I did because of missing out on it for a bit.
I do think that it's helpful for me to know what is next. What else are you working on beyond Lexi?
My next book is going to be a dark matter skeleton crew sort of crossover aimed at younger children because there aren't that many sci-fi books for very young children. You're talking like 6, 7, 8-year-olds. So I'd really like to do something a bit more gritty, a bit more in depth for children that age. That's not too much, but something that's going to really inspire them to want to get into STEM industries as well, because STEM is so important. So that's my next project that I'm really excited about. And I want to write a nonfiction book teaching parents how to teach their children to read, because I've been teaching for 20 years now. So I should probably share what I've learned. So yeah, those are my 2 next big projects.
That's fantastic. And where can people find you to chat with you or be able to? You tell people how we met.
We met on Threads.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're my Threads friend. I love
Yeah.
that. I absolutely adore that. I keep meeting people, and I would talk to them for a while, and I go, "Hey, would you like to have a conversation about it?" They're like, "Sure," and it just keeps happening, and I'm like, "Okay, great.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Threads
please
is
tell
just
me."
one of the best communities. Like the writing community on Threads is just so friendly, so welcoming, and you hardly ever hear a cross word. And I'm writing about science fiction where people can get very passionate and very opinionated. And still, it's a nice environment because I always say Janeway is my favorite Star Trek captain. And a lot of people don't agree with that. A lot of people pick Cisco as their favorite or Picard as their favorite. And there's no bitterness, there's no arguing. There's just, you have your choice and I have my choice, and that's all fine. And I really like that.
What I've really appreciated about Threads versus some of the other social media, and I've tried to slowly drop off of all the other ones, is the fact that the first response is not just the sarcastic, snarky
Yeah.
response. It's a real
Yeah.
world response. It's, hey, oh yeah, I think this. And then we have a conversation. And I'm often really surprised by the level of decency. And when you talk about social media, it's just really hard because it's lurking. It's there. Somebody's
Mhm.
going to come in and say something rude, and that's fine. It's going to happen. But that's not the
Yeah.
first reaction. And I've been
No.
very pleased with that. So I thank you for being my Threads friend.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you just taking the time to chat with me.
Oh, I'm just honoured that you would invite me onto your podcast. I just think that's amazing. So thank you very much for having me.
For over 40 years, BayCon has brought fans together for epic panels, amazing guests, workshops, gaming, and unforgettable fun. This year, we enter a convenient parallel dimension, a spookier side of speculative fiction that you can experience this 4th of July weekend at the Santa Clara Marriott. BayCon, the Bay Area's longest running, fan run science fiction and fantasy convention. There's a place for you here. Visit baycon.org for tickets and more. Thanks again for watching this episode. There are links to the Lexi Walker books in our show notes, so be sure to go check them out. As always, we appreciate you watching, listening, and being part of Sci-Fi Fandom. So until we meet again, remember, never be cruel, never be cowardly. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind. I'm Sinohui, and until then, be seeing you.